Okay, and we are up and running. I'll give folks a few minutes to pop in, and then we'll go for it.
Very good.
Let's drop a prompt in here for folks. Tina, are you hearing that background noise, or is that just me?
I'm not hearing any background noise.
Okay, perfect. Good. That's good news. If it's just me, then I can ignore it. It could be my headphones, but if it's not bugging you, it's not going to bug me. Okay, so as people are jumping on, big welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. If you could share in the chat where you are joining us from and what you're hoping to learn from us today. We'd love to know who you are, where you're from, and if there's anything that we haven't planned already that we can be sure to call out as we go along. I'll give it one more minute and then we will get into our content. See a couple of our new partners joining. Welcome. You've come to the right place. This is a good time for this webinar if you're just signing on with us.
Yes.
All right, it's 1:02, so I'm going to get us started. Welcome everyone to our session on keeping your AI implementation from flopping. I'm Angela Brown from Halda, joined by one of our partners, Dina Florian from Baylor University. And we are going to share some tips on how you can get the most out of a new AI purchase for your institution. So before we get started, I always like to give people a little bit of housekeeping, answer some of those burning questions, the biggest one being, is this webinar being recorded? The great news is yes, it is, and you will also receive a copy of it in your inboxes tomorrow. So if you have some colleagues that you want to share this with after the fact, or you miss something and you want to go back and watch it on demand, you'll have that opportunity. And then finally, if you have a question or want to contribute, don't be shy. There are no cameras, there's no microphone. You can hide behind your keyboard and ask whatever questions you have. We'd love to hear from you. I love it. John is excited to get onboarded with us. Really great to hear that. But yes, please let us know where you're joining us from, what you're hoping to learn. As I mentioned earlier, if there's anything that we don't have pre-planned, we can make sure we get to that. If you have a question in real time, you do not have to wait till the end. I'll be keeping an eye on both the Q&A and the chat tabs. So fire away with any questions, anything that you might want us to go deeper on. We're happy to do that for you. Or if you want to wait until the end, you can do that as well. So Dina's going to do most of the talking here, so I'll turn things over to her, but I'll be chiming in here and there throughout.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Dina Florian. I'll just introduce myself real quick. I'm at Baylor University in the graduate school, and I have a background in IT as well as higher ed. I have always personally thought that I'm a very good tester. I've found issues in other systems when I helped beta those systems or, gone through an implementation, have just, always done a very good job of testing. And so I went at AI and went at Halda the same way and discovered that AI is very, very different. So that's a little bit of what we're going to get to talk about today. I also just wanted to mention, AI has kind of been like the Terminator, like is Skynet going to come and take over the world? AI, it's intelligent. It doesn't need me, right? Because it's smart. They're going to take our jobs, replace human beings. So what do I need to do? Anyway, the good news is that AI is artificial intelligence and still really needs us. So that is great news for all of us here. AI is job security as well. So the post-purchase letdown, we're all busy in higher ed, and we're looking for ways to make our jobs easier and make things go more smoothly and quickly. And so, we hear about this wonderful thing called AI. And so, yes, we need to get AI on our websites. We need to get information to our prospects and our students more efficiently. And this is the solution. Um, but that urgency didn't necessarily mean that we were ready to jump in or had planned accordingly. So we implemented quickly. We were excited about the possibilities and um, didn't quite have a full understanding of what it meant to put AI on our website. We're looking to get something going quickly, but not thinking about how it impacts our processes and our current ecosystem. And as a result, our results weren't what we expected them to be, perhaps. Um, we didn't see what we wanted to right away, perhaps. We had two different groups who did this at our university, our kind of graduate professional group, and then another section of the university. And ours performed a little bit better than theirs did. So why did that happen? But we also tested ours differently and interacted differently. And, so what happens is that confidence can drop. And I'm sure Angela could probably speak to that. This whole scenario more, having worked with clients, um, beyond just my Baylor experience.
Yeah, no, I think it's the reason why we are doing this session is that I think, with all of the noise that's happening out there with AI, it's easy to feel like you're behind. It's easy to feel like, okay, I have to jump on this bandwagon and I have to, it's also easy to believe a lot of the hype that's happening out in our industry. We're in a very noisy space right now from an AI vendor perspective. And it can be difficult to figure out, to separate what people are saying they do or saying what their capabilities are from reality until it's too late. And that's something that we see time and time again. We've certainly had our fair share of partners come to us and say, hey, we thought we were going to get this from this vendor, and that's not what happened. And they're coming to us after the fact, but that budget is already spoken for. So you're almost double dipping from a vendor standpoint. And so we thought it was important to try to provide people with as much support and guidance as possible, so that once you've signed on the dotted line and you're earlier in the process, you have the ability to avoid some of these pitfalls. And I think we've named quite a few of them. If you go with something based on name alone, I think in other aspects of our lives, we've certainly had our fair share of those experiences. And I think that there's this perspective that AI is inherently fast. Yes, it can work very quickly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should implement it quickly. And so it's very important to make sure that you take your time and work really closely with the vendor that you partner with their implementation team, their account management team, to make sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and that you're not so excited about the possibility that the implementation moves too fast and it ends up breaking, or there's a misalignment in expectations after the fact, for sure.
Yeah. Yes, and so the most expensive assumption, we're done. I spent probably a year trying to get a contract in place with Halda. I don't know what your institutions are like, but having to go through IT and procurement and this person and that person, OGT and all the people, can take some time and take some work. And so it is very easy at the end of the day to say, "Ooh, it took a year. I did it. I'm done." And as I mentioned before, being very busy, we had separated from an OPM not long before I started looking at Halda. And so we really needed some assistance. And so we probably did what Angela just said. We had some major needs and we jumped in and we implemented a little bit too quickly based on those needs, and didn't really think through or know what we were getting into. So I'd mentioned before how I have been a very good tester and have tested things in the past that didn't work with AI. It's not just another piece of software. Ownership is important, and it kind of extends out to like your website. What's on your website? Who has the authority to say, hey, can you update that page that's 17 years old and has never been updated and has terrible data that our wonderful AI is happy to tell the world about now. Training plan. That training isn't just for us as users, it's also for AI. How are we getting trained on using AI, and how are we training AI? What are we doing in that space? And then just the back and forth of the feedback loop between giving AI feedback and working together with our partners. Do you have any more on this, Angela?
I think the biggest piece of feedback, or maybe guidance that I would give people, even as somebody who uses AI quite a bit as a marketer, is that, in some ways, even though people think of AI as it's tech, it's robots and agents and all of that, I almost think of AI as an extension of my team. And what I mean by that is when it comes to training, when you hire a new person on your team, and we'll reference this sort of metaphor again later in the presentation, yes, there's some onboarding, and you don't necessarily expect them to know everything, and you don't expect that their knowledge to be fixed. And so we all learn as we go, as we learn, more about the institutions we work for, the dynamics of our work environment, and how different departments work together, and the things that we sell, so to speak. So that's an iterative, ongoing process, and AI works the exact same way. It is not a situation where once you hit launch day, you can go like this and you're done. And that's a really important takeaway, even though it can be hard to think about this technology as another person, so to speak. That's exactly how I think about it. And that means that there's going to be an ongoing sort of maintenance component that you have to expect when you take this on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll put on my IT hat a little bit here. And, AI is not software, it's a full system. Software just executes and AI interprets. So software is if X happens, then Y. And it's all the time. And if that doesn't happen, it's because there's a bug and you have to fix it. Software follows rules that are all set up front. It produces those very predictable outputs, X equals Y, every single time. That's what's going to happen. And it doesn't change. It doesn't improve, and it doesn't get worse. It just is a steady state the whole time. AI is very different. It doesn't just follow instructions. It interprets patterns, and it looks at context. It's weighing information and behavior, the timing and the history of it. It is interacting, and that interaction and the information from it shapes its future outputs. That can be for better, and it can be for worse. And it also changes based on that exposure, what you correct, what you ignore, and all of that will influence what it does. So enrollment is very dynamic, and so AI can definitely help in that space. And when things change, it can adapt to that and help in that area because it can interpret, it can grow. But it also means that we need to help give it the inputs because it is artificial, like I'd said, at the end of the day.
I think you nailed it. And that's a great segue into our next section.
Yep. So how AI behaves in the wild, and this also gets into kind of the employee reality of AI a little bit, and it's almost like, may I introduce you to our new part-time employee AI, or maybe 24/7 employee AI.
Exactly.
So does need onboarding. It needs to know, what the goals are. It needs to know definitions, priorities. It needs to know your user manual, where it can get the most up-to-date information. It needs to know the boundaries. And from there, it will fill in the gaps. One interesting thing that I read as I was, doing a little bit of research about this was that even silence has meaning to AI. Which is a very different way of looking at things. A piece of software doesn't care if you ignore it, and AI responds differently if you ignore it. It learns from exposure. The more that it's exposed to, the quicker it will learn in terms of that data that you're giving it, any decisions or corrections or habits that will help it learn faster. It gets confused by contradictions, and all of these things are true of people too. The more information you give a person, the faster they learn it. The more you give conflicting information to a person, the more they're uncertain about what to do or how to respond. It does perform as managed. If you don't manage it very well, it won't perform very well. If you ignore it, it will, not have a good day either, so to speak. It doesn't just rise to our aspirations because we want it to do well. So it really does need that help, that input, that training. And for us who are used to computers that do exactly what we want them to do, or they're broken and we send it out for someone to fix it, we have to learn to be comfortable with something that's more flexible than that. Just like a new employee might give an incorrect answer, AI might give an incorrect answer. In both of those instances, you approach with a correction, and then it doesn't happen in the future. But it's a very different way of looking at things of, I can't prevent a bad answer from going out, but I can train. And I can, like that, for that particular answer, I can inform, and the correct answer will go out in the future, just as it would for an employee. So it is a very interesting model and to play with in terms of what how it behaves in the wild.
I love that. And I think before we move on, the one item on this slide that I want to really, really emphasize is number 5, because this is so hard. It's really hard to do if you're in marketing, if you're in enrollment, if you're in IT. What's nice about software is that you know exactly what to expect, and it does exactly what you purchase it to do most of the time. Sometimes it gets a little wonky, but in most cases, you buy a piece of software to perform a specific task, and you can pretty much trust that it's going to perform that task. AI can be reliable most of the time, but still not 100% of the time. It makes a massive difference with the context that you provide it. But again, just like that new hire, you don't always know exactly what it's going to do. And so as people are adopting these tools, one thing that can be very difficult, but is also really necessary, is the need to be willing to let go just a little bit. And the thing that I go back to all the time is, I remember the first time in my career that I sent out an email through a CRM system. And it wasn't me necessarily hitting the send button. It was me hitting schedule and trusting this email to go to the right people and, for nothing to break, for everything to work the way that it was supposed to. And at that time, it took a really big leap of faith because it was a new way of doing things, especially it was the first time that I remember the first time I sent to a really large list, And so if you think back over the course of your career to all these micro leaps of faith that you've taken with email, with social media, with other new channels and technologies, it's very, very similar. And that has actually helped me a little bit to be able to exhale a little bit more and recognize that, there might be something, that goes awry, but it's not going to make or break your cycle. It's not going to make or break the process. And it's just part of some of those initial growing pains of adopting something new.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that tension point is why we tend to over engineer. And you can go on to the next slide too, because because we don't like it when the wrong answer goes out. We want our prospects to get the best information possible. We want them to have the information that they need. And so it is very hard for us to let go of that control a little bit. And yeah, I think you can back it up just one more slide,
Okay,
Angela.
let me hit my back buttons here.
Yes, perfect. Nope.
Oh, nope, sorry. I'm getting there.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. So we don't want someone to get bad information. We want every prospect, we want every person who hits our webpage to get the right information. And I think that's what makes it so hard for us to let go of a little bit of that control and to not over engineer our AI, because we don't want someone to get the wrong information. We have such good intentions. And so we're living in this tension point when we step into the AI space of, wanting to get information faster to folks, wanting them to be able to find it more simply and wanting it to be right. But because of the nature of AI and how it learns and how it grows, the 100% isn't necessarily the case. And I think for me, and we can get it very close to there, this is why, monitoring and training is so important so we can keep the accuracy. And so for me, I've had to remember that, our website needs help and AI reveals the issues in our websites. But those issues were already there before AI pointed it out. Um, and so how easy is it for us to not update a deadline on our website, or to update the deadline and someone hits a 9 instead of a 6? So just remembering that errors do happen because we're human. And so our websites do have some errors in them just because humans put them together. And we have to be okay with the same for AI, that sometimes errors will happen, just because it is more in that human space rather than in a static program space. So AI will struggle with too many rules and constraints. It will struggle with too many exceptions. It will, because AI learns from patterns. If we feed it exception after exception after exception, it focuses on the exceptions and not on the 95%. And as you can imagine, that'll create not great results at the end of the day. Um, Precision isn't accuracy. Often context will impact um, what's accurate, where precision won't. Precision gets too boxed in. And AI needs some freedom to reason. When it's boxed in too tightly, it can't do what it needs to do. So we need to remember that we have to teach AI how to think and how to find the information, and not just kind of cram it into one streamlined way of doing things. It doesn't need perfect instructions. But it does need clear goals, good information, and room to analyze the information that it's being given.
That's great. So Dina, do you have an example of a time where over engineering may have been a bit of a challenge for you?
Yes, I do. I have an over engineering example, and I have a testing example. So the other group that has been using Halda, they were trying to get those very precise answers, and they wanted the exact same wording and phrasing every time a question was answered or a certain question was asked and then answered. They wanted the exact same wording for that answer. And so to help with making sure that all the answers were correct all the time, they built out content cards for almost everything. And the performance went down. It just kept going down and down and down and down and down, because it because the AI was constrained so much to those content cards. Basically, if it couldn't find an answer in the content card because the content cards were so widespread, it just wouldn't have an answer at all. And so this is one of the great things about working with a company like Halda. You have wonderful engineers and wonderful support staff who go and look in at the back end to see what's going on. And they said, oh, your content cards are just completely shutting down the AI's ability to do what it needs to do. So removed almost all content cards, and it started performing much better after that. The other example that I have of testing was normal testing, asked a student worker, hey, could you call the AI recruiter and ask it questions about the programs? Here are some of the questions that you might want to ask, and go ahead and ask about every single program just so that we can make sure it has the information. Well, AI uses context. So that poor AI recruiter, at the end of the day, was like, I don't know if you're interested in social work or business administration or speech pathology. I mean, I think you might have a pathology if you really think that you can, enroll in all 12 of these programs. So the answers were not great because we just overwhelmed the poor thing with all of these questions, and it was trying to pull all the context together. So after you ask it about 5 different programs, which no grad student is going to ask about 5 disparagingly different programs, but we do to test. But after you've asked AI about 5 different programs, and then you say, when's the application deadline? It's like, which program? Like, I don't know what we're talking about anymore. So that's, for me, that was actually the thing that snapped me out of my normal way of thinking about technology and got me to realize, oh, this is a completely different beast altogether. And I need to approach it in a very, very different way, or it is not going to work. So those are my 2 examples.
Those are fabulous examples. Love it. Love that. Very helpful to our audience for sure.
Yeah. So even, that testing example, prompting isn't training. And so the prompts that my student worker was giving, just asking all these different questions, that did not help our AI know what to do. That did not create system readiness. It just created confusion and frustration on our part. I thought something was going terribly wrong when it was me that was doing something terribly wrong. Context matters. Again, it performs best when it understands the goals and the constraints and definitions, and the direction that we need to go. I've had people try to put in like trick questions into
Oh
AI. Like,
no.
how does it answer this question? And I said, it answers it the exact same way Google answers it. Like, it doesn't know, it's a trick question.
Right.
So
Right.
trick questions don't help. And then conflicting inputs really do compound over time. Doing some research about this, AI doesn't average inconsistency, it just compounds. It keeps it
Mm-hmm.
all together, and it all accumulates. So, all of those little bits of inconsistencies or rigidity or The funny quirks that we do as humans, it accumulates for the AI and becomes a big monster that it doesn't know how to deal with, and it impacts performance at the end of the day.
That's huge. I think this last one too is important because we talked about timing earlier, and this is a little bit of a
Mhm.
callback to that. Just making sure that you are crystal clear with your vendor about what the ramp up time is really going to be between when your contract is signed and when you're up and running, and making sure that you're budgeting that time for the implementation to happen in the amount of time that's really needed in order for things to be successful. Because I mean, if you rush it, then it's disappointing for everyone.
Mhm. Yep. So AI does actually learn when things go wrong, because we can tell it, no, not this way, go this way instead. Um, Outdated sources, as I mentioned, the 17-year-old web page, um, it's not going to help us at the end of the day. And bad data really is worse than hallucinations, because as I mentioned, we want people to have the right data, and data is the thing that we can control. And so we want to make sure that our sources are up to date, that our web content is up to date. We don't have any rogue websites out there. Um, it seems like a big part of the initial project in implementing AI is finding all those websites, and AI really does help you to find those things. And the thing that I reminded myself as well was, if my AI with Halda is coming up with some crazy answer, then Google is too.
Mm.
And so it's such a good opportunity to really see what on my website is not what it needs to be. Because if I'm working with an AI tool and I'm getting weird responses because of what's on my website, Google's going to get those too. And I know people are going to be on Google, even if they don't happen to hit my AI that I have on my website. So it's such a good opportunity to look at what needs to be updated on the website. Yeah, we've talked about inconsistent inputs, and then monitoring is really important just to make sure that nothing crazy is happening. Um, AI doesn't forget, it repeats what has been shown, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And all of this section kind of made me think about the change in the Grad Plus loans and the Grad Plus loans going away. And how this ties in. So, have our websites been updated to indicate that those Grad Plus loans are going away June 1st? Have they not been updated? So if we don't update that information, if we don't make sure that our AI knows, our AI could continue to tell people, oh yes, if you're coming in fall 2026, you have the opportunity to have a Grad Plus loan. Well, no, you
Mm.
don't. So,
Right, right.
yep. So keeping up to date on our data and on our websites is super important.
That's huge. It's a really great call out.
And so ownership, who's responsible? I think the website aspect goes into this a little bit, as well. Just getting everyone on the same page. Who are those website content managers? Who's the person that has the authority to say, hey, I need you to update this website and make sure that it gets done? Who are the central decision makers in how the AI is being used and what you're doing with it, and who's the champion for it, to pull all of these things together and make sure we're moving forward in one cohesive direction. Just like an employee would have a supervisor, who is that person or that group of people who are helping to manage this tool and this technology.
It's huge. Your AI needs a boss too.
Yep. AI needs a boss. So what actually works? I've alluded to some of it a little bit. It's better control, not more control. At the end of the day, we don't want to micromanage. People don't want to be micromanaged, and I've learned that AI does not want to be micromanaged either. It functions better when it's given direction. That means fewer rules and clear guidance. um, Revisiting performance, like your ongoing tuning is like your performance evaluation. What's going well, where do we need to adjust inputs, where do we need to reinforce good behavior and good outcomes. So it's tuning rather than troubleshooting. And expert configuration, this is where Halda has really helped us, especially since we were pretty busy coming off that transition away from an OPM, really relying on their expertise in terms of configuring Halda behind the scenes and helping with some of the training, um, while I was able to let them know what we needed specifically as a university. I think one of the things that our other partner on campus had done was they're a very capable group, and they jumped into doing a lot of the configuring on their own, and maybe didn't rely on um, our our um, our manager, who was working with us, as much as they could have in terms of getting things set up and configured. We needed more learning time in terms of how do we manage this system on our own. And so relying on the vendor is really important, especially in those initial days as we're getting set up and learning how this tool works and how to best utilize it.
That's huge. So now we're going to talk about what does this actually look like at a high level in reality. And the two things that I want to add here, I won't necessarily go through this bullet by bullet, but based on some things that I've seen both at Halda and at other vendors, there are two things that I think are very important. One we referenced previously, but the first is make sure that you're taking advantage of everything that you've purchased. So really understand what exactly you've agreed to and what is involved in making all of that work correctly and to get the outcomes that you're looking for. So in our case at Halda, having two-way integration set up is a really powerful key or unlock to making sure that you can get the data that you're looking for. So if you want to make sure that there's some alignment between expectations and reality being fully implemented is how you're going to get the most out of what you purchased. And then the second piece is to really know your documentation. So that's whether it's internal or part of a knowledge base from your vendor or some combination of the two. But this is really great for succession planning or those like if you get hit by a bus scenarios. So there needs to be a department level understanding of what you bought, what it does, and how it helps you. So if there's turnover on your team, which we all know definitely happens, people aren't looking around and going, wait, what is this? What did we buy? What is it for? What does it do? Making sure that you keep that documentation and that communication really tight is very important. So breaking through a quick 30, 60, 90, and there are some things in the later points that you might want to do even earlier, but resist overcorrecting. This is important to give your tool of choice a solid amount of time to learn, to kind of do some troubleshooting, look for patterns, try to it's 30 days is for diagnosis. That's the highlight there. Make sure that everyone who needs to know how to use the platform, how to get data out of the platform, that's when the training happens, and it's happening in parallel. You're training internally and you're training the AI, as Dina referenced earlier. Then at the 60-day mark, you'll probably have some of these ahead of time, but if you haven't, definitely make sure at this point that you can have that check-in with your vendor and do that sort of performance review for the tool. That's when you can start to get into tuning and doing more refinement. That should be ongoing, but you want to make sure that you give the software or the AI, the agent, I shouldn't say software. We just talked about how AI is different from software, but how you can give the tool the opportunity to learn and continuously improve. Then at the 3-month mark, that's when it's all about optimization. So you've laid your foundation, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and you can really kind of hit the ground running.
Yes. So for success, operating differently, and thinking about areas of operating differently, things that have not been, they've been important in the past, but now they're critical. I've mentioned the website, and I think that's one of the biggest things. So in the past, it's like, well, we'd like to spruce this up a little bit, but we're busy and it'll just have to do for now. That's something that we need to do differently. It's not something that we can do later. It is something that has to do now. So priorities may shift in terms of what's important now with AI that wasn't maybe quite as important previously. Again, that letting go of control, and that's remembering that there's always been a level of human error. There's always been data errors on our website. What we can manage is what our websites look like, what the data looks like, what information we're giving our AI, even if we can't control what it will come out with at the end of the day. But we can know if we give it the best information and the best direction as possible, it will perform very well. And then making sure that we treat AI like a system that learns, and that it will be dependable if we give it what it needs, if it has the right information and knows the goals that we're aiming for and has the boundaries. So it's really, are we working with our AI? Not have we pounded it into submission, but it's, are we working with it? It's a type of partnership at the end of the day.
That's a great stopping point. So we did not have any questions during the session, but now is the time. If something has popped into your head while we've been speaking, if there's something that you're wondering about, or where you'd like to get some of Dina's expertise, now's the time. Otherwise, we will wrap up and give you back the rest of your late morning or afternoon. I hear that, Cindy. That's great. Okay, if we feel like we need to learn more about managing our AI, how do we get it done? Dina, I'll let you take that one first, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, if you haven't, don't be afraid to reach out to the person that you're working with, helping you get Halda set up, and just asking them the questions. You can even ask ChatGPT like how to help manage and train AI. I think it's funny that it's kind of self-aware about what it needs. But those are a couple things to start with. I feel like we're at the beginning of like turning the corner from our bad practices into good practices. But those are a couple things that are definitely helpful.
That's great. And for Halda folks, I was sharing this with Sharon too. If you want some more one-on-one help, I would say definitely connect with your account manager, schedule some time. If we need to pull folks in from our engineering teams or our product teams to give you a really deep dive, we are more than happy to do that. And if there's a place where you get stuck, there are oftentimes a lot of things that we do for people, like we'll walk you through it and let you sort of shadow, just to make sure that you fully understand what's going on, that you feel comfortable. So definitely connect with your account manager, and they'd be happy to spend as much time with you as you need to make sure that you're up and running. Are there other questions before we wrap for the day?
Yeah, and I'll just commenting on the last comment. Yeah, my experience, everyone has been so wonderful to work with at Halda, and definitely just ask. I'm the same way. I usually try to figure things out before asking questions. I have not in this case, just because I've been so busy, and everyone has been very gracious, and they're wonderful to work with and happy to help. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to reach out. Don't be shy about it. And they're there to support, which is one of the things I love. When we're a Slate school, when we heard at Summit last summer that Slate now had AI, my immediate response was, we're going to need to hire another person if anyone wants to use that. So one of the benefits of using Halda is they have that help and support, which has been really helpful and wonderful for us.
It's huge. Yeah, don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask. This is a no judgment zone. So we're just happy to help, and part of that is making sure that our partners can be successful and feel comfortable with the platform. Oh yes, Cindy, we will absolutely be sending a recording and a copy of the deck. So that'll hit your inbox tomorrow. So we've got you there. Okay, everyone. Well, you have been a fabulous audience. Thank you, Dina, for sharing your experiences with us today. And, feel free to reach out if something pops into your minds after the fact. You can reply exactly to the email that I send to you tomorrow with a link to the recording and the presentation slides. And keep your eyes out for our invitation to our next webinar in February. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.